Book 1. The Stealer of Souls.
In a city called Bakshan, which was rich enough to make all the other cities of the northeast seem poor, in a tall-towered tavern one night, Elric, lord of the smoking ruins of Melniboné, smiled like a shark and dryly jested with 4 powerful merchant princes whom, in a day or so, he intended to pauperize. Moonglum the Outlander, Elric's companion, viewed the tall albino with admiration and concern. For Elric to laugh and joke was rare, but that he should share his good humor with men of the merchant stamp, that was unprecedented. Moonglum congratulated himself that he was Elric's friend, and wondered upon the outcome of the meeting. Elric had, as usual, elaborated little of his plan to Moonglum. Pilamo, overdressed, intense, and scrawny, was the main spokesman for the 4.
We need your particular qualities as swordsman and sorcerer, Lord Elric, and will, of course, pay well for them.
"And how shall you pay, gentlemen?" inquired Elric politely, still smiling. Pilamo's colleagues raised their eyebrows, and even their spokesman was slightly taken aback. He waved his hand through the smoky air of the tavern room, which was occupied only by the 6 men.
"In gold and gems,"
answered Pilamo.
"in chains,"
said Elric.
"We free travelers have no need for chains of that sort."
Moonglum bent forward out of the shadows where he sat, his expression showing that he strongly disapproved of Elric's statement. Pilamo and the other merchants were plainly astonished too.
"Then how shall we pay you?"
"I will decide that later," Elric smiled.
"But why talk of such things until the time? What do you wish me to do?"
Pilamo coughed and exchanged glances with his peers. They nodded. Pilamo dropped his tone and spoke slowly.
"You are aware that trade is highly competitive in this city, Lord Elric. Many merchants vie with one another to secure the custom of the people. Bakshan is a rich city, and its populace is comfortably off, in the main."
"This is well known," Elric agreed. He was privately likening the well-to-do citizens of Bakshan to sheep, and himself to the wolf who would rob the fold. Because of these thoughts, his scarlet eyes were full of a humor which Moonglum knew to be malevolent and ironic.
"There is one merchant in this city who controls more warehouses and shops than any other,"
Pilamo continued.
"Because of the size and strength of his caravans, he can afford to import greater quantities of goods into Bakshan and thus sell them for lower prices. He's virtually a thief. He will ruin us with his unfair methods."
Pilamo was genuinely hurt and aggrieved.
"You refer to Nicorn of Ilmar?"
Moonglum spoke from behind Elric. Pilamo nodded mutely.
Elric frowned. "This man heads his own caravans, braves the dangers of the desert, forest, and mountain. He's earned his position."
"That is hardly the point,"
snapped Fat Tomiel, beringed and powdered, his flesh aquiver.
"No, of course not."
Smooth-tongued Kelos patted his colleague's arm consolingly.
"But we all admire bravery, I hope."
His friends nodded. Silent Deanstaff, the last of the 4, also coughed and wagged his hairy head. He put his unhealthy fingers on the jeweled hilt of an ornate but virtually useless poignard and squared his shoulders.
"But,"
Kelos went on, glancing at Deanstaff with approval,
"Nicorn takes no risks selling his goods cheaply. He's killing us with his low prices. Nicorn is a thorn in our flesh."
Pilamo elaborated unnecessarily.
"And you gentlemen require myself and my companion to remove this thorn,"
Elric stated.
"In a nutshell, yes."
Pilamo was sweating. He seemed more than a trifle wary of the smiling albino. Legends referring to Elric and his doom-filled exploits were many and elaborately detailed. It was only because of their desperation that they had sought his help in this matter. They needed one who could deal in the necromantic arts as well as wield a useful blade. Elric's arrival in Bakshan was potential salvation for them.
"We wish to destroy Nicorn's power,"
Pilamo continued.
And if this means destroying Nikorn, then...
He shrugged and half smiled, watching Elric's face.
Common assassins are easily employed, particularly in Bakshan.
Elric pointed out softly.
True, Palamo agreed. But Nikorn employs a sorcerer and a private army. The sorcerer protects him and his palace by means of magic, and a guard of desert men who ensure that if magic fails, then natural methods can be used for the purpose. Assassins have attempted to eliminate the traitor, but unfortunately, they were not lucky.
Elric laughed.
How disappointing, my friends. Still, assassins are the most dispensable members of the community, are they not? And their souls probably went to placate some demon who would have otherwise plagued more honest folk. The merchants laughed half-heartedly, and, at this, Moonglum grinned, enjoying himself from his seat in the shadows. Elric poured more wine for the other 5. It was of a vintage which the law in Bakshan forbade the populace from drinking. Too much drove the imbiber mad. Yet Elric had already quaffed great quantities and showed no ill effects. He raised a cup of the yellow wine to his lips and drained it, breathing deeply and with satisfaction as the stuff entered his system. The others sipped theirs cautiously. The merchants were already regretting their haste in contacting the albino. They had a feeling that not only were the legends true, but they did not do justice to the strange-eyed man they wished to employ. Elric poured more yellow wine into his goblet and his hand trembled slightly, and his dry tongue moved over his lips quickly. His breathing increased as he allowed the beverage to trickle down his throat. He had taken more than enough to make other men into mewling idiots, but those few signs were the only indication that the wine had any effect upon him at all. This was a wine for those who wished to dream of different and less tangible worlds. Elric drank it in the hope that he would, for a night or so, cease to dream. Now he asked,
And who is this mighty sorcerer, Master Pelamo?
His name is Theleb Kana,
Pelamo answered nervously. Elric's scarlet eyes narrowed.
the sorcerer of Pantang?
Aye, he comes from that island.
Elric put his cup down upon the table and rose, fingering his blade of black iron, the rune sword Stormbringer. He said with conviction,
I will help you, gentlemen.
He had made up his mind not to rob them after all. A new and more important plan was forming in his brain.
Theleb Kana,
he thought.
So, you've made Bakshan your bolto, eh?
Theleb Kana tittered. It was an obscene sound, coming as it did from the throat of a sorcerer of no mean skill. It did not fit with his somber, black-bearded countenance, his tall, scarlet-robed frame. It was not a sound suited to one of his extreme wisdom. Theleb Kana tittered and stared with dreamy eyes at the woman who lolled on the couch beside him. He whispered clumsy words of endearment into her ear, and she smiled indulgently, stroking his long, black hair as she would stroke the coat of a dog.
You are a fool, Theleb Kana.
She murmured, her hooded eyes staring beyond him at the bright green and orange tapestries which decorated the stone walls of a bedchamber. She reflected lazily that a woman could not help but take advantage of any man who put himself so into her power.
Shona, you are a bitch.
Theleb Kana breathed foolishly.
And all the learning in the world cannot combat love. I love you.
He spoke simply, directly, not understanding the woman who lay beside him. He had seen into the black bowels of hell and had returned sane. He knew secrets which would turn any ordinary man's mind into quivering, jumbled jelly. But in certain arts he was as unversed as his youngest acolyte. The art of love was one of those.
I love you.
He repeated and wondered why she ignored him. Yasana, Queen of Yakor, pushed the sorcerer away from her and rose abruptly, swinging bare, well-formed legs off the divan. She was a handsome woman, with hair as black as her soul. Though her youth was fading, she had a strange quality about her which both repelled and attracted men. She wore her multicolored silks well, and they swirled about her as, with light grace, she strode to the barred window of the chamber and stared out into the dark and turbulent night. The sorcerer watched her through narrow, puzzled eyes, disappointed at this halt to their lovemaking.
What's wrong?
The queen continued to stare out at the night. Great banks of black cloud moved like predatory monsters swiftly across the wind-torn sky. The night was raucous and angry about Bakshan, full of ominous portent. Theleb repeated his question again, and again received no answer. He stood up angrily then, and joined her at the window.
Let us leave now, Yashana, before it is too late. If Elric learns of our presence in Bakshan, we shall both suffer.
She did not reply, but her breasts heaved beneath the flimsy fabric and her mouth tightened. The sorcerer growled, gripping her arm.
Forget your renegade freebooter, Elric. You have me now, and I can do much more for you than any sword-swinging medicine man from a broken and senile empire.
Yasana laughed unpleasantly and turned on her lover.
You are a fool, Theleb, and you're much less of a man than Elric. 3 aching years have passed since he deserted me, skulking off into the night on your trail, and leaving me to pine for him. But I still remember his savage kisses and his wild love-making. Gods, I wish he had an equal. Since he left, I've never found one to match him, though many have tried and proved better than you. Until you came skulking back, and your spells drove them off or destroyed them.
She sneered, mocking and taunting him.
You've been too long among your parchments to be much good to me.
The sorcerer's face muscles tautened beneath his tanned skin, and he scowled.
And why'd you let me remain? I could make you my slave with a potion, but you knew that.
And you wouldn't, and are thus my slave, mighty wizard. When Elric threatened to displace you in my affections, you conjured that demon and Elric was forced to fight it. He won, you'll remember, but in his pride refused to compromise. You fled into hiding and he went in search of you, leaving me. That is what you did. You're in love, Theleb Ka'arna. And your love won't let you use your arts against me. Only my other lovers. I put up with you because you are often useful. But if Elric were to return...
Theleb turned away, pettishly picking at his long black beard. Yazana said,
I half hate Elric, but that is better than half loving you.
The sorcerer snarled.
Then why did you join me in Bakshan? Why did you leave your brother's son upon your throne as regent and come here? I sent word and you came. You must have some affection for me to do that.
I heard that pale-faced sorcerer with crimson eyes and howling rune sword was traveling in the northeast. That is why I came, Theleb Ka'arna.
Theleb face twisted with anger as he bent forward and gripped the woman's shoulder in his taloned hand.
You'll remember that this same pale-faced sorcerer was responsible for your own brother's death. You lay with a man who was a slayer of his kin and yours. He deserted the fleet, which he had led to pillage his own land, when the Dragon Masters retaliated. Damn it. Your brother was aboard one of those ships and he now lies scorched and rotting on the ocean bed.
Yajana laughed again.
You always mention this and hope to shame me. Yes, I entertained one who was virtually my brother's murderer. But Elric had ghastlier crimes on his conscience. And I still loved him. In spite or because of them. Your words do not have the effect you require, Theleb Ka'arna. Now leave me. I wish to sleep alone.
The sorcerer's nails were still biting into Yajana's cool flesh. He relaxed his grip.
I am sorry. Let me stay.
Yajana shook her head wearily.
Go,
she said softly, And, tortured by his own weakness, Theleb Khana, sorcerer of Pantang, left. Elric of Melniboné was in Bakshan, and Elric had sworn several oaths of vengeance upon Theleb Khana on several separate occasions, in Lormir, Nadzakor, and Tayloru, as well as Yakor. In his heart, the black-bearded sorcerer knew who would win any duel which might take place.